Hello everybody and welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. We have a good one for you as always. Thank goodness it still does continue to be semi-hot here. Very, very looking forward to enjoying that while it still lasts, but we do have a great show for you today because we are back again to talk about the California recall. Gavin Newsom, as many people began to expect in the last few weeks, holds on easily. We'll take a look at how he won and what messages do that send throughout the political arena. How will Democrats react? How will Republicans react? How should they react? Those oftentimes are two separate things entirely. Also today we have the Democrats who support the Progressive Reconciliation Strategy. We'll take a look at who's on board to get a true whip count from the Daily Poster's Julia Rock. Also, very interesting situation, controversy developing a bit about booster shots here. Who and some of the top figures in the FDA now are quitting because of the Biden administration's handling of this plan. And Dave Sordo with a great piece on, yes, the Supreme Court justices, despite what they may want you to believe, they are a bunch of they're bipartisanly a bunch of partisan hacks. Like, it doesn't matter what side they're on, they're all partisan hacks. Well, and also, we'll take a look, we'll get into it. This is going to set me off, you can tell. You know how I feel about our highest court in the land, especially some of the justices on it. But we do have a great show for you today. It is Newsflash. Let's get started. All right, let's get right into it today. And of course, we start with this anti-Trump recall. That's really what it was, as California basks in its clairvoyance. The future happens here first, Gavin Newsom said, calling his state America's coming attraction. It's people now. The biggest thing was obviously in this recall campaign was the first time that people are leaving California. This is, by the way, here in the New York Times, by emphatically turning back the effort to recall him from office. However, Newsom made clear that California's cherished role presaging the politics of tomorrow was not as significant as another larger factor in Tuesday's results, the tribal politics of today. The first-term Democratic governor will remain in office because in a deeply liberal state, he effectively nationalized the recall effort as a Republican plot, making a flame-throwing radio host the Trump-like face of the opposition to polarize the electorate along red and blue lines, which, the red territory in California, obviously, a lot smaller, at least people-wise. So that is why Gavin Newsom lost here. And honestly, I think there are obviously, since, Republicans lost when they really could have had a serious shot at this, because obviously the way, just for those of you who haven't been following, let's give you a little bit of an update, kind of on how this recall works. It started off, I believe, a long time ago, just kind of as a, pre-pandemic, as just a, not really too big of a thing, kind of a small-time petition, had to gain a certain amount of signatures, and that was mostly about Newsom's handling of things like immigration, all the stuff that a small cohort of radical Republicans in California would be mad at Gavin Newsom for doing as a big state liberal Democratic governor. Then of course COVID goes around and he really is harsh with the restrictions, and still case numbers are still incredibly high. Then of course he gets caught breaking his own restrictions by eating at French lobby with lobbyists. Just a devastating blow. This guy pretty much the epitome of California governance, California Democratic governors, just kind of really, pushing the identity levers, not really doing too much, in terms of real material politics, and, really making people's lives very, very, tough, and then, breaking the restrictions in that kind of way, was a real kick in the arm, or kick in the pants, for the recall effort. The recall effort just took off, gain a bunch of signatures, and that's how it eventually got to this election point. And pretty much the way it works is you get a ballot. There's two different questions on the ballot. The first one is yes, no. Do you want to recall the governor of California? And then there's if so, who do you want it to be? And there's 46 candidates who ended up running. Of course, the top one there being Larry Elder, who pretty much is, very much a Fox News pundit. He's literally a guest on Fox News. That is the best way you can understand him in terms of politics, the way he presents it. That is just who he is through and through. So to have him as a governor of the biggest liberal state in the country, the biggest state in the country, would be a real remarkable coup for the Republicans if they were able to pull that off. And just really because of the fact that, homelessness is a big problem, and people are like really not having a good time in the inner cities. A lot of income inequality, economic inequality. People really like leaving in big numbers, or not leaving in big numbers, but leaving net more, which is a thing that never has happened in California. Crime on the rise. All these things that Elder has been hitting nonstop, and not necessarily just Elder, but the Republican, very critically, the Republican recall effort. That was working. In early August, they were pretty much tied, which was really remarkable. They were pretty much tied in terms of Gavin Newsom. Do you want to recall him? Do you not want to recall him? But there was no real clear understanding of who the candidate was going to be. And once that started to emerge, and once it became clear that it was Larry Elder, and Gavin Newsom really made it clear that Larry Elder was going to be the person trying to take over, things really did take a downward turn. Newsom, he found success not because of what makes California different, but because of how it's like everywhere else. He dominated in California's heavily populated Democratic cities, the key to victory in the state, where his party outnumbers Republicans by 5 million voters. Gavin may have been on a high wire, but he was wearing a big blue safety harness, and that's exactly right. It was always like he was always heavily favored to win this election just because of the sheer numbers at play here. But what the little trick you can do is, if there's enough dissatisfaction with Gavin Newsom, and his approval rate never actually dipped below 50%, but people just generally, I guess, ambiently were dissatisfied about how California was going. They wanted to change things for a period of time. Then they started to realize who they're going to have to change them with and who would be taking place. It was like exchanging bad for worse, I think, for a lot of voters. But yeah, I really do think both parties here, they have a bit to be worried about. If you're the Democrats here, the fact that this model and the fact that this came so close is quite disturbing. It could have been so close. I think the recall results ended up being, really not that close at all. It was 63-36, a little bit even higher than expected. So pretty much all throughout the coast of California, he dominated up through San Bernardino and Imperial County, up through Humboldt County, which is up by, way up to the north where they have all those wildfires there. But of course, the inside with Fresno, that was, it was very close. Even the places where Yes did win, which really shows you the blowout, 5.8 million to 3.2 million. That was the ending total. Actually, it was 70% reported, actually. So there's still a little bit more to come in. Pretty low turnout. The result, though, largely mirrors 2020. Counties that went for President Biden last fall stuck with Newsom. And so far, there are millions more votes to be counted. Newsom appears to be doing about as well, or even slightly better than he did when elected governor in 2018, which is a pretty remarkable thing, because it speaks to really an update, an interesting policy lesson for what is going to happen. This is back to the New York Times here. A recall does offer at least one lesson to Democrats in Washington and of next year's midterm elections. The party's pre-existing blue and purple state strategy of portraying Republicans as Trump-loving extremists can still prove effective with the former president out of office, at least when the strategy is executed with unrelenting discipline and an avalanche of money and an opponent who plays to type. And of course, with Larry Elder, that was a fair, completely, honest justification. If they try to do that again with someone who isn't, will it work as well? I think that's a very much an open question that a lot of people will, be interested in finding out come midterm time. You either keep Gavin Newsom as your governor or you'll get Donald Trump. President Biden said in an election eve rally in Long Beach, making explicit what Newsom and his allies have been suggesting for weeks about the Republican frontrunner, longtime radio host Larry Elder. So this is pretty much a guy who would like to go on Fox News and talk with like Tucker Carlson about like racist trees or whatever, like crazy dumb story that Tucker Carlson figured out about. So not really too surprising that he lost. But by the time Biden had arrived in California last night, Newsom was well positioned. In the days leading up to the recall, he was warning Democrats of the right-wing threat that would face in elections across the country next November. Engage, wake up, this thing's coming, he said in an interview, calling Elder a national spokesperson for an extreme agenda. So if Biden, well, what he was doing here, I think very smartly, is trying to like look to his own midterm, futures and say, again, the classic, time and time again, time-honored Democratic message was saying, we would not able to get probably as much done as you thought we were going to be able to get done when you elected us 2 years ago. So do you want to stop us or do you want to help us, or do you want to put in charge, the guys who tried to blow up the Capitol, or not blow up the Capitol, but, attack the Capitol on January 6th. And I'm sure we'll say it like they tried to blow up the Capitol, but it has been very, very interesting. So California, which has not obviously elected a Republican governor since the George W. Bush administration, is hardly a top area of contention for next year's midterms. Maybe some Orange County seats could be in play, but not really a big spot. Yet for Republicans eyeing Biden's falling approval ratings and growing hopeful about their 22 prospects, the failed recall is less an ominous portent than a cautionary reminder about what happens when they put forward candidates who are easy prey for the opposition. The last time Democrats controlled the presidency in both chambers of Congress in 2010, the Republicans made extensive gains but fall short of reclaiming the Senate because they nominated a handful of candidates so flawed they managed to lose in one of the best midterm elections for GOP in modern history. So that was, very, I think a fair take there. And you're going to see a lot of that dynamic be playing out over the next, with what the Democrats decide to do and with what the Republicans decide to do. That's to say that primaries matter, and if the Republicans are to reclaim the Senate next year, party officials say they'll do so by elevating candidates who do not come with the bulging opposition research files, a 27-year veteran, the bulging opposition research files of a 27-year veteran of right-wing radio. Larry Elder saved their lives on this, says Rob Stutzman, a Republican strategist in Sacramento, California, said of Democrats. Until this race had a general election context, there was not a lot of enthusiasm for life in California. I think it's a fair point. It really is. But when you have a near-perfect caricature of a MAGA candidate, well, you can turn your voters out. In California, yeah, but nationwide, you're going to freaking need a lot of MAGA seats and a lot of MAGA people to hold on to your base, because your base is not going to come sniffing near you if you're bringing, like what the weak sauce is. I don't really know what the Republicans' idea like a better candidate is. Gray Davis, the Democratic former California governor who was recalled in 2003, where Schwarzenegger was elected, put it more pithily. He was a gift from God, he said of Elder. He conducted his entire campaign as if the electorate was conservative Republicans, which the electorate was not. And he went right. He hit all those conservative buttons that everybody loves, and it just did not work out for him at all. So very, very interesting strategy there. It really does kind of portend pretty badly for the Republicans, because they're going to need people like this to make that case to their base and also try and pull together a coalition and, try and pull together some, swing voters, some independent voters. And if they're not, if they can't do that with the MAGA people, then that may be a huge fracture in the Republican coalition.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our segment to tell you all about what's going on here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network this summer. We do, as I'm sure you know, have a great lineup available for you. We, of course, start with our flagship show, Newsflash, all new Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Uncultured, irregularly back every Saturday with live music and sports analysis with my co-host for the summer, Bennett Laxton. Hidden History will be brand new every Thursday on a bit of a hiatus, but will return shortly. It's the summer of podcasting. It's the summer of sounds. All you got to do is just keep listening wherever you get your podcasts, always here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to our next story. This is, of course, from the Daily Poster. Julia Rock, cross-posting it in the American Prospect Intercept as well. So as the House of Representatives begins debating Democrats' landmark budget reconciliation package, only 17 Democratic lawmakers have publicly committed to keeping the legislation tied to the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So that is pretty much the progressive strategy. This is the one that kind of preserves the leverage that, progressives pretty much know that they'll need to get the bill passed through the House, which is very, very interesting. Only 17 Democrats in the House have publicly committed to this. So pretty much what they're saying is, and I think they all know this and understand this, because what they're doing is, if they pass the infrastructure bill first, or the small bill first, if they pass the bipartisan bill first, then that completely takes away their leverage for passing the bill, really opens it up to significantly pare down the reconciliation bill. That is something that the pretty much large parts, now we can assume, of the Democratic caucus would really appreciate. But what it does look like is Nancy Pelosi, she's committed to this. Some major figures have committed to this. So maybe 17 is a soft number. But the only thing we can do is really find out more and investigate. The whip count of legislators' statements on the issue can be viewed in this running document put together. So he says he's undecided. So, for example, Sean Casten of Illinois, 6th District, he said he was undecided. And most of them have no response to the question. And there's a fair bit of people who are undecided. Some of the more conservative Democrats have said they're undecided. But you got people like Katie Porter, Pramila Jayapal, AOC, all those people have said they're yes. Ed Perlmutter of Colorado, he said Ed supports the two-track strategy, including the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and Build Back Better Act. He looks forward to seeing both bills passed soon. So pretty much saying, farting out of his ears, some random answer. But that document, if you can go on the Intercept, find the article, save it, you can track it because it will be updated. If there are not enough progressive Democrats willing to oppose an anticipated late September vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill and keep the two bills together, the business-aligned Democratic lawmakers could be empowered to pass the infrastructure bill and kill the larger reconciliation bill that corporate lobbyists are frantically trying to stop. So that's pretty much that's the strategy part here. So progressives, if there are not enough progressives willing to oppose this anticipated late September vote on this bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is going to be a big political mistake, or not mistake, but it's going to be a big political ask, because it's 100,000% the right thing to do. But it's going to be a big, if the two-track strategy isn't guaranteed, but if it is, obviously by all means vote for it. But what is going on here is that full pressure is going on, and what will happen to people if there is enough people and they do make their move, they'll be attacked, they're going to be smeared, they're going to be called out, they're going to be insulted in every way they can. It'll be just like Biden in Afghanistan, that full court press that we know and love from the media, from the Democratic Party, from the Republican Party, and all that stuff. There's a bipartisan bill, Mitch McConnell has signed on to it. Maybe progressive could say it just devalues it because Mitch McConnell, but it's going to be interesting, to say the least, about how this bill fares and what people's reactions and pushing, the level of pushing we will see. So the progressive strategy, though, it has been endorsed by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and President Biden, has been to pair the bipartisan infrastructure bill with the larger reconciliation package. Either both pass or neither do. In August, a group led by Josh Gottheimer, backed by the No Labels group, we talked about that, and the problems they may have had, successfully split the two packages apart by winning the promise of a vote on the bipartisan bill on September 27th. And this could be a vote to this could be a vote to consider the bill. It doesn't have to be a vote to pass the bill. Pelosi could just go past it, but there's a lot of things Pelosi could do to in spirit not honor this commitment, but technically honor this commitment. But In order to keep the two together, progressives must either complete the work on the larger bill by that date or defeat or stall the bipartisan bill on September 27th. So Gottheimer was offered a vote, not passage, after all. So they voted on this bipartisan infrastructure bill. Progressive bloc votes no. Then they kind of back at square one, and they go back to working on this bipartisan bill. Backers of the bipartisan bill, the reconciliation bill. Backers of the bipartisan bills say they expect Republican support to be in the low double digits. Henry Cuellar said around 10 to 12, although that may have fallen, as Kevin McCarthy and former President Donald Trump have been discouraging Republicans from giving the Democrats a win. The math is pretty straightforward. The Democrats have a 4-seat majority, so adding 12 Republicans gives a cushion of 16 votes, meaning progressives have just enough committed no votes for a razor-thin margin if they all commit. Dozens of Democrats did not immediately respond to our request for comment, so the figure of 17 may undershoot the count. And this article will be updated in the responses as they come in. The Congressional Progressive Caucus has previously said it has the private commitments to the majority of their 95 members for the two-track strategy. There are a lot more, but not everyone's ready to be public, said Pramila Jayapal. We have the majority of our members in our caucus in our previous whip counts, and we expect the same now. We will release the names later if we have to, but I feel confident of our numbers. So Pramila putting down the marker there, saying that there will be enough people to hold the line here. Very, very interesting. Something we're going to be keeping a close eye on as the September 27th date approaches. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch. All right, let's move on to our next story, and it all has to do with this booster shot, this third vaccine that people are getting. Yeah, so it's all about the boosters here. Big debate right now. I think anyone who tells you it's not a debate and it's been settled is probably either lying to you or a Pfizer employee at this point. So yeah, I would be very, very suspicious. But this is pretty much how the story has played out thus far. It's two top scientists who have recently announced their retirement from the United States Drug Watchdog Agency, the Food and Drug Administration. You may be familiar with it. So these people, they retired early, shall we say, and they have criticized the policy of giving most people COVID-19 booster vaccinations just days before the Biden administration announced plans to do so. So pretty much these people, they're like, I don't know about this whole booster thing. This is not the best. Biden's handling this for trying to do this for more political reasons than not. And, Pfizer, Biden made the promise, we're going to do vaccine patents, still has not yet acted on that. And this is really, like we said, when it comes down to it, the food, or the drug industry, and we saw this again with the drug pricing story. I saw this actually in between recording sessions for this episode, and we will be talking about this. But it's a really great example of, again, how much control, and people don't even realize it, that Big Pharma still exercises over our policy decisions and choices. So Philip Krauss and Marion Gruber, who resigned from the Food and Drug Administration 2 weeks ago, are among the authors of a scathing critique of the widespread booster shots, was published in The Lancet on Monday. The article, which argues that scientific evidence does not yet justify giving most people third shots of the messenger RNA vaccines, offers an insight into the internal tensions in the Biden administration that were ignited by the White House's sudden decision to back the booster plan. And I think it's going to be very interesting. Why did they decide to do that so suddenly? Why did they make a change of course and really start pushing this booster plan? We saw people like Fauci, so people kind of associated with the White House and kind of liberal media figures like Leanna Wen really going out there and pushing on this booster issue. The piece warns that current evidence does not appear to show a need for boosting the general population in which efficacy against severe disease remains high. So it's obviously balancing this versus severe disease versus mild disease. How much of that do you want to protect against? It seems like, though, for people who are elderly, immunocompromised, all that stuff, the people who are most vulnerable, that would probably be beneficial for them to go get that booster shot. But if you're not in that population, it seems to be like there's a little bit less of an incentive or a need for you to go get that shot. So the Biden administration announced last month it intended to start offering Americans another round of mRNA jabs made by BioNTech, Pfizer, and Moderna from September 20th, following evidence of waning effectiveness several months after the second dose. But the announcement was made before either company even made an application to the FDA to authorize a third dose. So it seems like they're definitely making plans. The Pfizer especially has been incredibly aggressive on this, really pushing, Albert Bourla. You got, them releasing their deep independent studies were pretty much, if I had to bet, market researchers being like, we need to push this, we need to figure out any kind of justification, because a lot of the R&D stuff, a lot of that's taxpayer funding coming from people like BioNTech. Like, those are the people who are really putting, the scientific legwork. Pfizer much more in the distribution and ends up making a lot of the profits from it. So the announcement was made before either company again had the time to make this third dose, but both companies have now made the booster shot applications. An expert panel will meet on FDA on Friday to give the FDA an official recommendation as to whether to authorize the Pfizer application. Moderna's application will probably be discussed in the coming weeks as well. The handling of the announcement has caused ructions within the administration as Krause and Gruber quit their jobs at the FDA's vaccine department 2 weeks ago, with allies saying they've been frustrated by the way in which the regulator had been undermined in this and several other key decisions. So, another great instance of, Biden pushing and manipulating some of the CDC is something that exactly people just freaked out about when Trump was accused of doing it, and he did. People are like, how can we ever trust the FDA again? Well, now we're seeing, evidence of people resigning, people getting really pissed off, and, you're kidding yourself if you don't think this would have been a massive news story under Trump. But it really does show you that there is some wiggle room in this. And if I were, looking out there, if I were me, if I were a person who was lucky enough to not be immunocompromised, I would be quite worried. So the FDA sent a statement. As noted in the article, the views of the authors do not represent the views of the agency. It added, we are in the middle of a deliberative process of reviewing the Pfizer booster shot supplemental approval submission, and the FDA, as a matter of practice, does not comment on pending matters before the agency. We look forward to the robust and transparent discussion on Friday about the application. So that is pretty much the FDA take on it. But I think it's going to be very interesting and definitely something to follow closely. Will the evidence pan out on this? I think there's a lot more evidence to come out for me to really be kind of convinced that this is necessary. So there's still real big disagreement among the scientific community on whether a booster shot is necessary. But it's going to be very interesting to see if that gets rolled into the vaccination requirements. Like, you will not need a booster, or you not be fully vaxxed unless you have a booster shot. Well, you need one to go in like restaurants in 6 months' time in places like New York City, where they're going to put that in with vaccine mandates and vaccine requirements. And people, I think people would be, by and large, down to get it. But it would really, again, kind of radicalize also some of the most skeptical, most vaccine-hesitant people out there, and probably even create some more of them as well. All right, we will now take a 20-second break, and after that, talk about a story that shows how awful the House Democratic Caucus truly is.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's news flash.
Okay, so the biggest story we're looking at is this is just new, actually. This is to do with the FDA and drug pricing, and specifically with the House and Energy Committee. And this is coming to the drug pricing negotiations that we have been seeing here. I'll take a look at how it played out. And in this kind of major move, in this major moment today, the House Energy and the House Energy and Commerce Committee, I believe it's called. I'm not exactly sure the name of it, but yeah. So that is we're going to break this down here in the New York Times. So this is Margot Sanger-Katz talking about the Democrats' stumble on drug prices, showing the power of the industry. So. House Democrats writing the health provisions for the big social spending bill aimed high. New coverage for poor Americans without insurance, extra subsidies for people who buy their own coverage, and new dental, hearing, and vision benefits for older Americans through Medicare. A pretty, not exactly what I would call high, but high for their perspective. Like, this was definitely something where there was some key provisions, things that activists have been hoping for quite a long time, making it in this bill. So it, of course, is very, very significant. And what do we see here? It's one of the provisions that they were planning more as a pay for, which was aiming to lower, prescription drug prices, a measure that would link the prices to certain prescription drugs to those paid overseas was devised for the government to save enough money to offset the costs of those other priorities, which are the extra subsidies for people who buy their own coverage, new dental, hearing, and vision benefits for older Americans through Medicare. All these great things, they could be paid for by the fact that, yeah, we just don't negotiate our drug prices. We literally let the pharma companies sell them to us. All these really important, again, life-saving drugs are literally the United States sits there and was like, yep, big pharma, you can sell insulin, you could sell all these really life-saving drugs, like cancer drugs, things like that, sell them to us for pretty much whatever price you want. We won't negotiate. We don't care. EU does it. UK does it. All over the world, they do it. They, negotiate their prices, and that's why they're so much incredibly cheaper. Like, it's literally a basic common sense thing to do that saves people's lives, saves people money when they're really sick. The House approach estimates suggest could save the government around $500 billion over a decade without money coming out of the pockets of the pharmaceutical industry. A really perfect policy, incredibly popular, politically winning policy. And you gotta love it, though, on another note here, that these are the exact same people who are like, oh, how are you going to pay for it? It's too much. We're trying to stimulate. And, when you provide a pay-for method that goes after the people that pay their salaries, they are not too happy. And, in Washington, we've seen it. We see it with Pfizer. We see it with the booster shots. I'm willing to bet, willing to guarantee, a special newsflash guarantee that Pfizer contact with the White House had a role to play in that announcement about the booster shots. But 3 House Democrats on a key committee today voted the measure down, this prescription drug price negotiation measure down. There's still ways for House leaders to put the provision back in the final bill, but the House Democratic majority is so slim that these 3 legislators, if determined, could represent a significant barrier to passing the broader package. And what this is just frankly embarrassing. It shows you that, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden, or just whoever is leading, they either, what's the more likely option? That they don't care, or that they just have no internal control or discipline over their caucus in comparison to drug companies. I would probably bet it's closer to the first one, but I'm not also, when it comes to a battle of who is someone like, Kathleen Rice going to listen to, drug companies or Nancy Pelosi, it's going to be drug companies every time. So there's that. But the dynamic is familiar to lawmakers who have worked on health issues. Health industries are large and have powerful lobbies, and they do not enjoy having their revenues cut. As with measures that might reduce payments to hospitals, doctors, and insurance companies, the House attempt to take a big bite out of drug companies has generated a backlash. I just don't think paying for a lot of things by crippling investments in life sciences is really the way to go forward, said Scott Peters, a Democrat of California, one of the 3 holdouts, to New York Times' Emily Cochran. Losing the investment in pharma is too big a price to pay. Really what that is just the epitome of someone who is spineless. If you see him in public, if you're, his constituent in California, I would be surprised if he's able to put one foot in front of the other and walk with the quality of the spine that he has, just literally letting his constituents pay $700 so they per pill or whatever the crazy, or per bottle or whatever the crazy number is for insulin, so that they don't die. And how we have to keep that, because that improves your life because of great investments in big pharma and life sciences, like the fig leaf, the curtain that they're putting over this complete and blatant fuckery is so slim. It's amazing that, still some people see through it. It's like, honestly, it's like he's talking to, babies. Does he really think people are that stupid? It's frankly, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. So, Peters District in San Diego, in the San Diego area, includes tens of thousands of workers in medical research and drug development. Some might lose their jobs if pharmaceutical profits shrink, research investments dwindled, or companies close their doors. That obviously is mostly a lot of just hype, and this probably would not be a very significant cut in Big Pharma's profit, but it would be a significant win. There's no doubt about that, but it would be it would not be a significant cut, especially if that booster shot goes the way that they want it. Peters co-sponsored a competing drug pricing bill, which he argues would better target the inefficiencies and market failures. There's only one market failure. It's that people like Albert Bourla and Pfizer pay people like you off so that you vote against this bill. Like, that's the market failure. It's you. Like, there's no other way to say it. So without the drug pricing provision, Democrats will have a tough time financing their other priorities. They're passing a bill using a special budget procedure to avoid a Republican filibuster, but the process means their bill has to hit specified budget targets. They really do have to pay for it because it's budget reconciliation. So if they don't pay for it, that it won't pass budget reconciliation. The parliamentarian will axe it out, and what the parliamentarian says goes, because she's the queen of the country. If the money saved from drug price regulation is reduced, so too is the pot of money that can be spent on other goals. Democrats have already abandoned plans for other revenue-generating policies like a wealth tax. So yeah, all the pay-for policies would just be completely cut out of this. So saving the lower drug prices make up a significant portion of the money Democrats have been planning to use to pay for their $3.5 trillion reconciliation package. They're planning to do various amounts of things, $500 billion. They're increasing corporate taxes to raise $946 billion. Medicare rebate rule, that'll get them $150 billion. So it's just IRS enforcement, tobacco and nicotine taxes. They've got these various things that they're working through on that. But yeah, so Kathleen Rice, the people who do this, Kathleen Rice, Scott Peters, and naturally, the pharmaceutical industry is not happy about the prospect of large price cuts. He described the measure as existential to his industry, and he also said it was unfair that drug companies alone are being asked to shoulder the cost of such a large healthcare expansion, or being asked to pay a disproportionate share of the bill. Well, what has happened is Big Pharma has ripped off and absolutely, sucked dry and profited off the sickness, misery, and death of this country for decades upon decades upon decades, and that, to me, they've shouldered that burden. They haven't had to shoulder the burden of actually behaving like legitimate moral actors in society. So maybe they should have to start shouldering that burden right now. We're going to be following the story for you again as well. This battle put the prescription drug prices in just as a pay for the bill. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting and very, very contentious. So worth keeping your eye on. David Sirota got a piece out in the Daily Poster. That is, obviously, we're going to check it out. War is peace, freedom is slavery, and the Supreme Court is a dispassionate, nonpartisan branch of government free of bias. That's the Orwellian fable that Justice Amy Coney Barrett is now asking Americans to believe. And Barrett is asking us to believe it not merely after the court's wildly partisan ruling on abortion rights, but also just months after she promoted climate denialism to a national audience and also refused to recuse herself as she helped secure a legal victory for the fossil fuel giant that employed her father for decades. So pretty much, yeah, this is what it's all about. Because the people don't understand this, especially, I think, conservatives, they've understood this, I'd say, since it's probably about Roe v. Wade. It's like, or at least the smart ones have. It's like the Supreme Court is not, your fantasy, 9 smart people putting together, solving things in a room. It's all about, just like everything, wielding political power. Who's going to be able to wield it? And right now, conservatives have decided that they're going to be able to wield it so much and so effectively and easily that they could pretty much do whatever they want, hand out these, big, wild victories, completely overturn Roe v. Wade, and then, make a statement out on TV with another Supreme Court justice and say, oh, yeah, we're not partisan hacks. What are you talking about? This is just, another example of, just like that guy, Scott Peters, the big pharma Democrat. He is another great example of the people who just they know they're so full of shit. You can see how full of shit they are, right in front of your face. It's painfully obvious, but they still come and say and try to tell you and make you believe and get offended if you say that's bullshit. That they're doing a good Samaritan thing, they're helping out, they're making the world a better place. That is the not only do you have to watch and like it as they piss on you, but they can, oh, thank you, sir, thank you. That is what they're asking at this point in time. First, the blatant hypocrisy, an event that seems turned out of the pages from The Onion. Barrett this weekend appeared with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell at a celebration of the University of Louisville facility he named after himself. Nice. After being introduced by the most partisan Senate leader in American history, Barrett declared that the Supreme Court, which now includes 3 people who worked directly on the Republican campaign to pilfer the 2000 election, is not comprised of a bunch of partisan hacks. Well, I'll take your word for it. This is ridiculous. We had people like Samuel Alito, like going on rants against like cancel culture that literally sounded like straight, like it came out of my conservative uncle's mouth. Like, it's nobody believes this stuff anymore, except for, upper class liberals. I feel like those are the people who only like still hold on to like the ideals, the decency of the Supreme Court. I mean, look at what they just did with abortion. It's not what's like, the Constitution is not what's driving these people. It's how much they can get away with without you noticing and caring about it. Like, that is what's driving. That is the game they're playing here, and it turns out they can go pretty far. If that wasn't enough, Barrett then declared that judges must be hyper-vigilant to make sure they're not letting personal biases creep into their decisions, since judges are people too. How's that going for you, Amy? That demand of ethical vigilance came less than 4 months after Barrett discarded her own past recusal list and opted to participate in the adjudication of a major climate case against Shell Oil, the fossil fuel giant that employed her father nearly 3 decades ago. Because again, when it counts, these people step up. They'll give you the appearance of, transparency and doing the right thing when it doesn't really matter. But when the message has to get out, in the media, when a court case has to be won for your friend, the elites will always step up and do what they need to do. And they can. They can pull the levers of power because, hey, she's literally a Supreme Court justice. Barrett's participation in the case followed her Senate confirmation hearing, which she refused to acknowledge the undisputed science of climate change, and which flaccid Democrats said not to bother to push her on recusal. She cast her position as an attempt to avoid being opinionated about the matter, but, of course, refusing to stipulate basic scientific fact is the opposite of dispassionate. It's very opinionated. It's an ideological and partisan expression of Republican orthodoxy wholly disconnected from blatantly empirical data. And in case you thought Barrett's zealotry, hypocrisy, and conflicts of interest are only germane to one isolated case, remember that in the coming years, the fossil fuel industry will be asking the High Court to shield it from legal consequences from its climate crisis, for its climate crimes. So that's going to be coming. We're going to see Supreme Court cases happening. And if, what's happening to Stephen Donziger is any indication, they pretty much control the courts already. So they're going to get away with it. But it's really important to realize that, in the wake of everything happening in Texas that we didn't really get to talk about, like, the Supreme Court, they're no different than any other major actor in our society. They're trying to advance their own goals, and I think it's pretty clear what those goals are. All right, thanks so much for listening to us. It's been Newsflash. Thank you so much. We'll be back soon.